In this lesson we're going to continue looking at the evolution of the atmosphere. You'll remember in the first part that we looked at phases 1 and 2, in which we looked at how the atmosphere changed from 4.7 billion years ago, when the Earth first formed, through to about 1 billion years ago. And now we're going to look at how the atmosphere changed from about 1 billion years ago through to the present day. Okay, so entering into phase 3, what we've got now is the introduction of multicellular organisms. Okay, they start to appear about 1 billion years ago, such as algae. So you're going to get more and more evolved multicellular photosynthesizing algae populating the oceans and eventually forming seaweeds and aquatic plants, which will then invade the land, forming land plants, which are going to be appearing, round about 600 million years ago. So you've got the first sort of land plants like lichens and mosses, okay, appearing around about 0.6 billion years ago. And then you're going to get more developed plants like trees, until nearly the entire surface of the Earth, both the oceans and the land, are covered by photosynthesizing organisms, which is going to result in a very large increase in the absorption of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through photosynthesis, and at the same time an increase in the level of oxygen. You remember that in photosynthesis, as we looked at in the previous lesson, carbon dioxide and water are transformed into oxygen and glucose, which will eventually get locked into the tissues of the plants or the algae. Okay, so as the amount of photosynthesizing organisms increased over the Earth's surface, that's over the landmass and over the oceans, through reproduction and evolution, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere got locked into that overall biomass. This would have increased gradually at first, but more rapidly as the amount of alga stroke plant life over the Earth's surface increased with time. And then what happens next is that here along these sort of watery shores or swamplands, trees will start to die. Okay, they fall to the bed of the swamp, and then they will get covered by a layer of silt and sediment. Okay, what is important about this is that the sediment stops oxygen getting to the trees, to the wood, and prevents it from decomposing. If it's allowed to decompose, the tissues will then actually change back into carbon dioxide. But the silt stops this happening, and gradually, as this process continues through millions of years, the pressure is built up on the layer of dead wood, and this then becomes fossilized under the pressure of the silt above into a layer of coal. And so the coal is produced as the pressure produced by the increasing layers of sediment transform the trees into coal. So coal is really fossilized trees. And so what's happening here is carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, through the process of photosynthesis, is becoming locked into the tissues of plants and trees, which then becomes fossilized and then locked into coal. So in this way, carbon dioxide is being removed from the atmosphere as it becomes locked into coal. Now, around about the same time as the land plants start appearing, you're also getting the first multicellular animals appearing in the oceans. So let's write that. So round about here we've got multicellular animals, and here those are represented here by these shellfish and this jellyfish. And so what's happening here then is that the animals feed on the alga, and then they basically die and sink to the bottom of the ocean, where their shells will collect and their tissues will get absorbed into the sedimentary rock on the ocean bed. And then we've got a similar sort of situation as was happening with the trees here. These tissues being absorbed in the sedimentary rock, they are protected from oxygen, so they don't decompose, and under the pressure of the sediment layers which start to build up over time, these layers of animal tissue get transformed under pressure into oil. So you're going to get a build-up of oil, or petroleum, which is the correct chemical word, really. So again, what's going on here again is the alga is absorbing the carbon dioxide through photosynthesis. The marine animals then eat the alga, they die, they're then transformed into petroleum. So carbon dioxide is being removed from the atmosphere in this process and being locked into petroleum beneath the Earth's surface. So to summarize here, through photosynthesis, we're getting in the atmosphere a very large reduction in carbon dioxide as it's being transformed through photosynthesis either into coal or into petroleum. Now there's one more mechanism going on here which is also causing a large reduction in carbon dioxide, which is going on again in these marine animals, and this is quite similar to the process we looked at in the previous video, where carbon dioxide is removed by the formation of limestone. Now you remember from the first video, through the process of erosion, that the oceans contain calcium ions. Okay, so these get deposited in the oceans through the process of physical and chemical erosion of land rocks, and also remember that carbon dioxide naturally dissolves into the oceans to form hydrocarbonate ions. Okay, so what these shellfish do is they feed on these calcium and hydrocarbonate ions and use them to form their shells and skeletons. So effectively these ions are being transformed into limestone in the shells and skeletons of marine animals. Okay, so as I said before, these animals die, their tissues are transformed into oil while their skeletons collect on the ocean bed, and so you're going to get limestone deposits building up on the ocean bed. And so this is the third way in this phase in which carbon dioxide is being removed from the atmosphere, this time by being absorbed into the ocean, forming hydrocarbonate or bicarbonate ions, which combine with calcium ions in the oceans to form the shells and skeletons of marine animals. They then die, then under pressure these skeletons get transformed into limestone, and so because this is actually a biological process, the animals are feeding on these ions, whereas in phase 1 it was a purely chemical process that was taking place. There were no living organisms involved, but it is basically the same sort of thing going on. Hydrocarbonate ions combining with calcium ions to form limestone. This type of limestone therefore is called biological limestone as opposed to chemical limestone. And I'm sure you've seen photos of the White Cliffs of Dover. Well, the White Cliffs of Dover are made precisely from this type of biological limestone. Okay, just to summarize then, in this phase a large amount of carbon dioxide is being removed from the Earth's atmosphere, and This is being locked into the evolving biomass over the Earth's surface through the process of photosynthesis. So carbon dioxide is simply being removed from the atmosphere simply because the overall biomass over the Earth's surface is increasing. Now then, some of that biomass, as we've just seen, will get locked through the process of fossilization of trees into coal, and some of that biomass will get locked into, through the fossilization of marine life, into petroleum or crude oil. And some of that biomass, through the contributions of the shells and bones of marine life, will get transformed into biological limestone. Now I recommend that you have a look at the next video in which we're going to describe these three phases briefly using a simple graph, and that will help you kind of put everything into position and get everything into place. Okay.